My mother-in-law abandoned me in another country and took my wife home. So I took matters into my own hands. I always believed that my life was excellent, even though it was never perfect. Sturdy, dependable Daniel, that was me. For the past 8 years, I had been convinced that I had built a marriage with Sophia, a woman I adored, that was worth preserving. A love greater than anything. A life that appeared unbreakable, at least on the surface. I won't sit here and claim we never argued, but anyone who says otherwise is either dishonest or delusional. Arguments are not a sign of failure. They are simply a natural aspect of being married and having disagreements. The real red flags don't come through slamming doors or raised voices, but through forced smiles and silences. By ignoring the small changes in someone's behavior because you don't want to seem suspicious, you convince yourself that everything is fine. That's exactly what I did. Margaret, my mother-in-law, was never intrusive. If anything, I thought she was an ally. Despite any warning signs, I liked Margaret. We weren't best friends, but we had a mutual understanding. I never saw why some men feared their mothers-in-law. Margaret wasn't obnoxious, nor did she meddle in our marriage. She mostly kept her opinions to herself. I saw her as a kind widow who had done her best to raise Sophia. She wasn't the type to whisper in her daughter's ear, poisoning her thoughts against me. If she criticized me behind my back about our finances, she did a very good job of hiding it. That's why I never hesitated to invite her on the vacation. Maybe that seems foolish, even naive, but at the time, it felt normal. It wasn't the first time I had done something for Sophia's family, because that's what happens when you love someone. You extend that love to the people they care about. So when I organized a trip to Spain, I saw it as an opportunity for us to get away and experience something new together. I reasoned, why not include Margaret? She was alone after the death of her husband. It wasn't as if she had a hectic schedule. I thought I was doing a kind deed. For years, I believed Sophia and I had a strong marriage. One where we built a home together, made decisions as a team, and supported each other through difficult times. I thought I knew her inside and out, but I was unaware of the version of our life that existed outside my perception. A version where Margaret despised me, where Sophia was content to let her mother shape her feelings toward me. A version where everything I believed was solid was, in truth, a fragile illusion about to shatter. And worst of all, I didn't even see it coming. That's what betrayal is, after all. The knife never comes from the opponent you expect. It all began with a simple idea, a gift, a way to break out of the routine. After working so hard, I wanted to do something special for Sophia. Our lives had become predictable: work, eat, sleep, repeat. Spain seemed perfect. The colorful streets of Barcelona, ancient landmarks, Mediterranean sunshine, world-class cuisine. A trip we'd talk about for years. One we both deserved. I wanted everything to be effortless for her: flights, accommodations, meals, excursions. Just pure joy. I included Margaret without hesitation. Since her husband passed, Sophia often worried about her, and I thought bringing her along would be good for them both. When I told Sophia, I expected excitement, maybe even tears of gratitude. Instead, she blinked at me, as if trying to process something odd. "Bring my mom," she repeated. I nodded. "It's not a problem. I'll cover most of it. She'll only have to pay for personal expenses." She hesitated. It was subtle, but I saw her look away and purse her lips. I ignored it. "That's really kind of you," she eventually said. "I'll ask her." Margaret agreed. I expected appreciation. After all, who gets a free trip to Spain? But something felt off. One night at dinner, Sophia casually mentioned, "She thinks it'll be fun," stirring her drink absently. No excitement. No warmth. I should have questioned it, but I was too busy planning. I booked a beautiful hotel with an ocean view, a private tour of historic sites, and a rooftop dinner at one of Barcelona's best restaurants. When the moment arrived, I stood in the living room, plane tickets in hand, expecting smiles and gratitude. Margaret sat on the couch, her face unreadable. Sophia stood with her arms loosely folded, watching. I handed over the tickets. Sophia took them, examined them, then forced a smile. "Wow, Daniel, you really did all this." Margaret said nothing, just looked at me, nodded, and muttered, "Thanks." Red flag number 1. It wasn't gratitude. It was obligation, a forced politeness. I brushed it off. Maybe she wasn't expressive. Maybe she just wasn't the excitable type. But the morning of the flight, Margaret was too composed as we packed. Daniel noticed the first red flag when he asked Sophia if she was okay. She nodded too quickly. The second came on the drive to the airport. Margaret barely spoke, staring out the window in silence. When Daniel caught her watching him through the rearview mirror, he smiled, but she didn't return it. By the third red flag, Daniel knew something was off. On the flight, he had ensured everything was comfortable, pre-ordering meals and reserving extra legroom, but Margaret barely acknowledged him. She chatted with Sophia, giggled at her phone, even made conversation with the flight attendant. But with him, nothing. The fourth red flag weighed heavier. When they landed in Spain, Daniel couldn't shake the invisible tension, but he told himself he was overthinking. Who would be upset about a free vacation? The first few days in Spain were perfect, at least on the surface. Daniel had planned everything down to the smallest detail. The weather was ideal, and they wandered through the vibrant streets of Barcelona, where the scent of toasted almonds and seafood filled the air. A guitarist played in the distance, and Daniel wanted this to be the memory they took home, a trip that brought them closer. Margaret followed the itinerary, ate the food, and saw the sights, even smiling at times. But something was missing. A distance. A coldness. Sophia seemed off too. Then came the rooftop dinner, a setting Daniel had imagined as perfect, candlelight flickering against wine glasses. When he reached for Sophia's hand, she smiled faintly, genuinely. But when he glanced at Margaret, her expression was a grimace. Red flag number 5. She quickly masked it, sipping her wine and forcing a smile. He convinced himself he had imagined it until he started noticing the little things. The way she always walked ahead, never beside him. The way she spoke only to Sophia, never to him. The whispers between them that stopped when he looked over. He ignored it all until one afternoon at Park Güell. The mosaics glittered in the sunlight, the city stretched below them, and Margaret, in the sweetest voice, said something to Sophia that made her lips tighten. Daniel wasn't supposed to hear it, but he did. Red flag number 6. That was when he realized Margaret had never wanted him there at all. That slip, that moment of truth, and an icy smile formed on his lips. Ryan was not just his best friend. He ran a private security company, specializing in lawful, efficient problem-solving. Exactly what Daniel needed. He sat back against the headboard, mind already working. When Ryan answered, he asked simply, "What do you want me to do?" Daniel laughed. "I want them to walk into something they'll never forget. Expect to return home and resume their normal lives? No. No more." "I got you," Ryan said, and Daniel hung up, letting out a slow breath. They weren't returning home to comfort. After landing, they were heading straight into trouble. While they flew back, Daniel enjoyed the rest of his trip. He strolled through Barcelona's streets, had a fantastic meal by the water, and even bought himself a pricey bottle of Spanish wine. He was not defeated. Later that evening, he sat on his hotel's rooftop, watching the sun dip below the horizon when his phone rang again. He answered. Ryan chuckled. "I wish I could see their expressions right now." Daniel closed his eyes, picturing it. "They should be landing soon," he murmured, already envisioning what was coming. "And when they do," he nodded to himself. "Let's just say they'll regret every choice they made today." 3 hours later, his phone lit up again. He let it ring twice before answering. The voice on the other end was trembling, thick with panic. "Daniel, what did you do?" He smirked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Daniel, the house. It's gone." He grinned. They had walked straight into the trap, expecting to return to their home. "That's odd. Don't play games," she snapped. He leaned back, sipping his wine. "You mean the house where I purchased the furniture? The one I paid for?" "Daniel, you lived in luxury for years without questioning the silence of your home. Please, this is insane. Just tell me where our belongings are." He laughed. "When you boarded that plane without me," he said, his voice turning cold, "you forfeited your right to speak." Margaret's voice cut through. "You monster. Where do you think we'll sleep?" "Oh, I don't know, Margaret. Maybe you should have considered that before deceiving the man who actually funded everything." Sophia's voice softened. "Daniel, please. Not like this." He tilted his head. "But you abandoned me in a foreign country without hesitation. Why should I hesitate now?" Silence. He could feel the weight of their regret. They thought they could return home as if nothing had happened. "Daniel, please, we need to talk," Sophia pleaded, her voice cracking. For a brief moment, he almost felt something. Then he remembered she hadn't hesitated to leave him. He inhaled deeply. "No, Sophia. We're done." He hung up, set his phone down, and gazed out at the Barcelona skyline. No regrets. Some betrayals demanded justice. And this was only the beginning.